Hello, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Q, a community organizer with VA Block. We recognize that you've taken time out of your busy schedule to be here with us tonight, and we're very grateful. Tonight is session 3 of our summer series, alongside our amazing community partners, Ivy Baptist Church and Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated Lambda Omega Chapter. We're hosting a series of town halls to gain a better understanding and hear from the experts on the issues you all have voiced you care about the most. For those of you who are new or less familiar with VA Block, we want to send you a very special welcome. VA Block stands for the Virginia Black Leadership Organizing Collaborative. We are a project of New Virginia Majority, and we focus all of our work in Hampton and Newport News. Our mission is to build empowered communities, and we strive to do this through a 3-pronged approach of integrated voter engagement, civic involvement, and leadership development. So for our 3rd summer series session, we'll be talking through economic justice. And tonight we have some great panelists here with us, and they have a variety of different information. So tonight is all about us better understanding economic justice and how the policy impacts the personal. We're going to talk with the panelists about the American Rescue Plan and in what direction is our state going and how can we impact that change. And if you've joined us here tonight with questions of your own, we really hope you leave with answers. So please utilize the chat and question and answer feature on your screen. And now, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Cindy, who's going to talk a little bit more about our program this evening.
Thank you, Q. So first, economic justice, what is that? It is a set of moral and ethical principles for building economic institutions. So economic justice aims to create opportunities for every person to have a dignified, productive, and creative life that extends beyond simple economics and finances. Policy decisions on the federal, state, and local levels have a significant and direct impact on all of our economic health. They can either help or damage our personal finances. This is why it is important to pay attention to and be aware of what is in the American Rescue Plan and to participate in the decision-making process for how the money will be allocated. The pandemic placed a blaring light on problems that existed well before this public health crisis that we are currently facing and made addressing them unavoidable. Unlivable wages, high eviction rates, poverty, and the list goes on, all existed, continue to persist, and will be ever present. But we have an opportunity now to tackle these issues with money that is being budgeted as we speak. Let us take this opportunity tonight as we discuss economic justice to learn about how that money can be used and how you can have a voice in this process through statement writing. We should also mention that the ARP decisions are based upon federal poverty lines. We know that that leaves many people behind that do not fall below that poverty line, but are still struggling to make ends meet. However, the ARP is the only act that we currently have to address immediate needs. The work of economic justice extends beyond this act and beyond the session. Later, we will discuss how to join VA Block so that you can continue towards economic equity. Thank you.
The Commonwealth Institute for Fiscal Analysis, better known as CCI, is the premier go-to organization for the numbers behind progressive issues and policy. They work to advance racial and economic justice in Virginia by advocating for public policies that are designed in partnership with people most impacted and shaped by credible, accessible, fiscal, and policy research. Ashley Kenneth is president and CEO at TCI, where she is able to turn her passion for social and racial equity into action. She previously worked as Director of Advocacy and Policy for the National Multiple Sclerosis Society and has a master's degree in social policy from the University of Pennsylvania and a BA in Communication and Sociology from the University of California, Santa Barbara. Laura Gorin serves as the research director at TCI and works to bring the strongest analysis to conversations about issues facing communities of color and low-income families. Laura's work includes studying the efficacy of safety net programs, the criminalization of poverty, and policies for immigration. Tonight, they will help us learn more about the American Rescue Plan and what it means for Virginia. We also have with us the Hampton Roads Community Action Program, better known as HRCAP, as we will hear from Nicole Willis, who serves as the tax program monitor for the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program, which is a free tax prep service through the IRS. Her educational experience with a master's in business administration, her accounting experience, and her distinctive training make Nicole a perfect fit to help others in our community with these programs. She will be discussing the child tax credit that is a part of the American Rescue Plan funding. And after we learn more about what's in the ARP, the American Rescue Plan, abbreviated, the VA Block team will talk a little bit more about the available resources and what we can do to impact how some of the funds will be spent. Our organization is focused on community organizing. We work to help residents visualize the change they want to see in our community, then we help them make it happen. So, all of that said, without further ado, our panelists from TCI now have the floor.
Great. Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you to Virginia Block for having us. It's really an honor to join you this evening. Again, my name is Ashley Kenneth, and I'm President and CEO at TCI. And we're a nonprofit organization that seeks to advance racial and economic justice in Virginia through partnership, through advocacy, and through policy research. And I'm joined this evening by Laura Gorin, who's TCI's research director. And together, we're going to provide a high-level overview of the American Rescue Plan Act. I'm going to call it ARPA for short. ARPA has led to an enormous amount of money being distributed to individuals, to states, localities, tribes, and schools in Virginia. And the sheer size and complexity of the law can make it seem quite unrelatable and overwhelming to the average person. And so our goal tonight is to break it down into digestible pieces because it's really important for advocates to have enough information in order to feel empowered to speak to local and state lawmakers about how all of the money should be spent in order to make our community stronger. You can go to the next slide, Laura. So ARPA is a federal law that was passed on March 11th, and it provides both flexible and targeted funding for the state of Virginia, all Virginia cities and counties, public and private universities and Virginia tribes, as well as direct relief for families. But it also provides us with a unique opportunity to do things differently in Virginia, to not only plan for how we're going to recover from the pandemic, but to also plan for our future and to make sure that we build a Virginia where we all have the resources and the support that will allow us to thrive long into the future. It's an enormous and historic package containing $1.9 trillion in relief measures. And there are several streams of money to serve several different purposes. And we're going to go through quite a few of them in the slides ahead, starting with direct help for individuals and families. A foundational provision for ARPA was the economic impact payments, or stimulus checks, or as some like to call them, stimmies. About 84% of Virginia taxpayers received this round of stimulus payments, which were $1,400 for individuals and $2,800 for joint filers like married couples. And it also included $1,400 per independent. The average rebate for Virginians was $2,650, and the payments were phased out for people who earn over certain thresholds. Next slide. ARPA also made significant changes to the earned income tax credit and the child tax credit. The federal EITC is a tax credit for people who work and who have earned income under a certain threshold each year. And because it's a credit, it reduces the amount of taxes a person may owe. The federal EITC is refundable, which means it puts more money into the pockets of the people who need it the most. Data from 2018 shows us that about 600,000 families in Virginia received the federal EITC, including about 9,600 people in the 95th district, where I know many Virginia Block members reside. And 435,000 families with low incomes received the federal CTC across Virginia. So these credits are incredibly important for lifting many low-income families above the poverty level each year. ARPA temporarily boosts the federal EITC for working people who do not have qualifying children, and this could impact up to 520,000 Virginians. I know that HR CAP is going to go into greater detail about the child tax credit and how families can take advantage of this really important changes that are going to help up to 1.8 million children in Virginia and will nearly cut childhood poverty in half. But I do think it's important to note that the changes to the EITC and the CTC are temporary. They're only for this year. So there is an opportunity for us as advocates to make sure that Congress knows that we want to make these changes permanent, or at the very least, we want them to be extended for several more years. Next slide. ARPA also extends federal unemployment benefits that have been so important to so many people during the health and economic crisis. The extra $300 a week was extended, as was the number of weeks that people are eligible to receive pandemic unemployment benefits until September 6th. Also, people will not be required to pay federal taxes on the first $10,200 they received in unemployment benefits in 2020 if they earn under $150,000 a year. So that will be a great relief to a number of families. Next slide. ARPA also makes some significant changes to help people access and better afford health insurance. It increased subsidies for thousands of Virginians, which will help people pay for coverage on the health insurance marketplace. For people who make too much to qualify for Medicaid, but less than 150% of the federal poverty limit, the cost of their health plan is completely covered. And people have until August 15th to enroll in new coverage via healthcare.gov or to go online and change their health plans. Next slide. ARPA also created the Coronavirus State Local Fiscal Recovery Fund, which has several pots of money for the state, which is expected to receive about $4 billion, as well as funding that's being directly provided to localities. And as advocates, you have the power to influence how a lot of this money is spent and how to hold decision makers accountable as they direct the funds to help those who need it the most. Next slide. The state will receive $3.8 billion to spend, and Virginia cities, counties, and towns will directly receive a total of $2.9 billion. These are flexible funds that can cover a number of costs through December 2024. They can be used for things like housing services, boosting incomes for essential workers, providing clean water, and outreach support to make sure that people know about all of these really important changes. $222 million is provided for capital projects in Virginia, and those funds are meant to enable work, education, and health monitoring, including remote options and response to the public health emergency. There are some rules about how the funds can be used, and one really important rule is that they cannot be used to pay for tax cuts. So the government can't say they're going to use these federal funds to replace how much we pay in taxes from our paycheck, for example. The Virginia General Assembly will meet this summer, starting on August 2nd, to begin talking about how to spend the $3.8 billion in funds that the state is receiving. So again, as advocates, we have an opportunity to influence how this money is spent. And it's important that we start having the conversations with lawmakers about some of our priorities, whether that's providing more direct aid to families, supporting small businesses, boosting pay for essential workers, or investing in really important projects like providing internet access to all and cleaner water. So I encourage you to think about what your community needs and how the state can support those needs. And now I'll turn it over to Laura, who's going to talk about the local funds.
Thanks, Ashley. So in addition to the funds that are going directly to the state of Virginia, local cities and counties in Virginia are also getting flexible funds as well as targeted funds for particular purposes. So in Newport News, the city will get about $32 million and Hampton will get about $22 or $23 million, which have the same rules and flexibility as the state funds that Ashley mentioned earlier. So this is another opportunity to talk to your elected officials about what is important to you in terms of finding ways to help ensure an equitable recovery and that we rebuild in a fairer way. So this is just further details reiterating what we just said there. And we can share these slides if that's helpful for people. And we also will point you to additional information at the end. So in addition to the flexible funds that each city and county and the state are getting, there is targeted relief for particular areas. And an important one of these is support for K-12 schools. This is being provided to school divisions from the federal government based on the number of students they have and the number of low-income students they have. And the intent is really to make sure that students who face particular barriers during the pandemic related to trying to learn virtually, that those students will get extra assistance. So I think it will be important for folks to talk to their school boards about ways that young people in your communities could benefit from these extra funds. Here in Newport News, we expect it to be about $82 million for the schools. And in Hampton, we expect it to be about $55 million for the schools. So these are not small amounts of money. Another type of funding that is coming to Virginia, this set mostly to the state, is for childcare and early education. A lot of childcare providers were hit by the pandemic in terms of disruptions to their funding and to the number of students who were enrolled in their programs. So there's a real need to stabilize those programs. And there's also an opportunity to rethink how we are funding childcare. Right now, a lot of childcare workers are being paid very low wages. And I think there's an opportunity to think about using some of these federal funds to make sure that the workers who are looking after our youngest residents are being paid more fairly. Higher education institutions are also getting relief, much of which they are supposed to be using to directly aid students. So each college should be reaching out to students and making sure that they get the assistance that they need. And then there's also funding for improving healthcare and social services. Again, we have further details on all of this that we can share with you. I don't want to take up too much time here, but it's important to realize that in addition to the flexible funding, there is direct support for particular areas. So as we advocate, we sound knowledgeable about what's happening. And similarly, there is direct support for housing, a significant amount for rent relief, although it does come with some of the same restrictions as the prior rent relief funding. So it will be important to make sure that this is administered in a way that can reach as many families as possible. And there may also be a need for some additional support for families who are not eligible for the federal relief for whatever reason. And so that is our extremely brief overview of the Recovery Act funding. I'm going to attempt in a second to put a link in the chat so you all can see the additional information that we have on our website. But I think that there might be some time for a few questions now from one of our other panelists.
Hi, my name is Maggie Macklin, and I'm a member of the Lambda Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority. And my question is to you, Ashley. You've talked about a lot of facts and figures tonight. My question is, can you talk about why it's important for the Hampton Roads community to understand the facts and figures, how they impact our daily lives?
Sure, that's a really great question. It's important for us to understand the numbers, to understand all of this information so that we are equipped to then take action. Policymakers are going to be making a number of decisions and funding services that will impact our everyday lives, and we should have a say in what happens. And there's a famous saying, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Shirley Chisholm took that a step further and said, if you don't have a seat at the table, pull up a folding chair. So this is really an opportunity for us to engage directly with lawmakers and with decision makers in the process, and to ask them to invest in us, to invest in our communities, put the money into services that will help us to thrive for the long term.
Okay, and one more. Can you talk more about how these numbers impact the policy that affects people's everyday life?
Yeah, Laura, do you want to jump in there?
Sure. I think it's important to think about the ways that folks were really hurt by the pandemic and the economic recession. A lot of, and frankly, a lot of folks are still hurting from the pandemic. It hasn't ended. And so I think a lot of folks really need help with getting back on their feet and getting their lives stabilized and being able to look for not just recovering to what we used to be, which we know wasn't good enough, but is really getting to a better place where they can fulfill their hopes and dreams. I mean, that's really what we want. And these are funds. This is like a significant amount of money and can really help with getting people there.
Thank you so much. I'll give it to Donetta.
Nicole, you can go for it.
Oh, you'd like me to start now?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, certainly. Good evening to everyone participating in the summer series, and to our panelists and attendees from the Hampton Roads Community Action Program, or HRCAP. The Hampton Roads Community Action Program's mission is to improve lives by providing optimum services and resources that strengthen our communities. We offer over 20 programs and services to assist families in escaping poverty and finding a path to self-sufficiency. This evening, I would like to speak about the child tax credit. The child tax credit through the American Rescue Plan is here to provide tax relief for families raising children during these unprecedented times. The American Rescue Plan signed into law on March 11th, the expanded or increased child tax credit from $2,000 to $3,600 for children age 5 and under, and $3,000 for ages 6 to age 17. What will be happening is the IRS will be paying half of the total credit amount in advance monthly payments beginning July 15th through December 15th. The payments will be $300 per month per child for ages 5 and under, or $250 per month per child beginning July 15th. So who is eligible for the child tax credit? Nearly all families with children under 18 years of age will be eligible. Eligible taxpayers don't need to take any action if they filed a 2020 tax return. The IRS will determine eligibility by reviewing the 2020 tax return and/or the 2019 tax return, as well as the non-filer 2 information that many folks put in and submitted to the IRS for their 2020 stimulus payment. Eligible taxpayers will benefit from the credit even if they don't have earned income or they don't owe any income taxes. So again, when will these payments occur? The advance payments will begin July 15th, and they will be monthly through December 15th to eligible taxpayers who have a main home in the United States for more than half the year. Eligible children must qualify as dependents on your tax returns. The children must be a U.S. citizen. They must have lived with you for more than 6 months. They must rely on 50% of the parent's support, and they must be a blood relative, adopted, or court-ordered custody. How do we get these advanced child payments? Most folks, again, will get these payments automatically. If you have not filed a 2020 tax return, we ask that you please do so. We have the volunteer income tax assistant VITA sites here in Hampton Roads that are here to assist you in filing a tax return. So that's one option. You can go to the Hampton Roads Community Action website at hrcapinc.org for the listing of open VITA sites to file a tax return. If you are not required to file a tax return, the IRS had put a non-filing tool on the irs.gov website where you can go and input your information as a non-filer to request those payments. So again, the advanced child tax credits will begin July 15th, and we're asking that everyone take advantage of those payments that are available for you. Are there any further questions?
Hi, I'm Donetta Hill, and I'm from Lambda Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Nicole, I did have a question. Can you talk a little bit more about why a family will have to opt out of the tax credit?
Yes, I'd be happy to do so. A family will look to opt out of getting these advance payments if they would not like to see the monies beforehand, before they file their 2022 tax return. So if they are not interested in getting those payments, they feel that they will not need the monies, they can go on the irs.gov/child tax credit 2021 website, and there will be a portal there for them to opt out. Another reason why folks may look to opt out is if they feel that their income will increase and they will be put into the phase out range for the credits. So that generally starts when a tax payer is at an income of $75,000 if they're single, $112,500 if they tend to file as head of household, and $150,000 if they file as a married couple. They will also may be interested in opting out if they feel that they have a significant family change where they will not have a eligible child. So they would look to do that as well. And if they do have a child that is born in 2021, they could also go to the portal to let the IRS know that they do have a child and request those payments as well.
Okay. And my next question is, how do I receive the tax credit if I have not filed a tax return or if I'm a non-filer?
So if you have not filed a tax return, we highly recommend that you do so. And we have the volunteer the VITA sites, the volunteer assistance sites for you that are free that you can go to get assistance for filing a tax return. If you are a non-filer, again, we ask that you go on the irs.gov/child tax credit 2021 website and go to the non-filer portal that is available there and put your information in and request those payments.
Thank you. I appreciate that information.
Oh, certainly.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for that vital information and for spending some time with us this evening. We are now going to hear from the Virginia Block team.
Thank you, Sia. So we're going to start off some more information. So for single filers, we already talked about a little bit or most of it beforehand. So we just want to reiterate some things and give some more details, as was mentioned above by TCI. So there are a few resources available to you through the ARP. Again, was mentioned previously, the Emergency Rental Assistance Programs to pay back for back rent. To see if you're eligible to apply, click the link that will be dropped in the chat and also the Facebook comments if you're on our Facebook Live. There is also potential utilities assistance. So according to the state's House Appropriations Committee, Dominion Power has been directed to forgive $217 million in debt with projected over earnings, and there is potential water and wastewater assistance available, as the money has been allocated from the ARP, but the systems are not yet in place to apply. So please be on the lookout for that in the future. Also, Cox has a discounted Wi-Fi program that's called the Emergency Broadband Benefit Program. And then that will also be dropped in the chat for more information. And then the slides will be brought up shortly. I think we're having a few technical difficulties, but this is also on the slides as well. And all these links will be dropped in the chat. So then we talked about Cox Emergency Broadband Program. And then as mentioned before, there's a $1,400 STEMI, as we mentioned, that you can claim on your tax return if you qualify. And so finally, there's the EITC. So that's as much as $1,000 for qualified individuals. And that's going to mostly benefit our cashiers or, frontline workers, food service workers. And then finally, due to the ARP, there's expanded access to the COVID vaccine. And to find a location, you're going to go to our link tree and click to find the available vaccine appointments in VA. And we post regularly on our socials. So with all of our vaccine updates, so be sure to follow us. And again, all of those links will be in the chat, and we will also send them in the follow-up email that you put in when you registered.
Awesome. So like she said, we went over a little bit of this, but we wanted to give a little bit more detail. So for singles and family filers, the unemployment insurance has been extended through September 6th. And that means that people will receive the $300 weekly checks in an effort to help families in and around the pandemic. So that is extended through September 6th. Also, there will be an increase in SNAP benefits, and those have also been extended to September just to help families through and around the pandemic. And then lastly, the ARP health insurance premiums through the ARP health insurance premiums have been lowered or eliminated for families who are already in the Affordable Care Act marketplace. And this means that millions of Americans across this country will gain access to coverage who were previously uninsured.
And for small businesses, the ARP will provide $28 billion for a new grant program to support hard-hit small restaurants and other food and drinking establishments. They'll also bolster the Paycheck Protection Program, also known as the PPP, with an additional $7.25 billion in funding to support small businesses and nonprofits that were previously excluded. They'll also devote an additional $1.25 billion in funding to support live venue operators, theatrical producers, live performing arts organization operators, museum operators, motion picture theater operators, and talent representatives that are struggling to make ends meet. Now, this is not an exhaustive list by any means of everything that was in the American Rescue Plan for small businesses specifically. However, you'll find more information on the ARP small business programs in your follow-up email after the conclusion of our presentation.
Yeah, so we just want to reiterate also what some of the funding can be spent on versus can't. So it can support public health. So that's like vaccination clinics, PPE, contact tracing, ventilation improvements in healthcare facilities, crisis interventions, substance use disorder treatment, job training, food, housing, financial security, support for small businesses with loans and grants, and also business counseling, help with tourism and travel, which is really, really big for this area, addressing health disparities, investments in housing, addressing educational disparities, promoting healthy childhood environments. And so some of these terms are not defined within the bill, and it allows great flexibility for states and localities to really respond to what's happening in their area. It can also replace public sector loss, which is kind of like helping solve budget shortfalls and rehiring those that might have had to been laid off in the public sector. And then also pay for essential workers. That includes healthcare, farmers, grocery store folks, restaurants, sanitation workers, public safety, truck drivers, bus drivers, childcare workers, educators and staff within educational institutions, and also social service staff. And those are just examples, not the exhaustive list. And then, of course, we can invest in infrastructure, whether it be water or sewer or even broadband access. And just to reiterate, it cannot be used for tax cuts on the state level or deposited into the pension fund or for long-term projects. The intent of the funds is really to go directly and quickly to address the urgent issues that we are facing in this pandemic. And so one way that you can think about this for when we were talking about they're not necessarily prescriptive, since that ARP allows for states and local governments to spend the relief funds in response to COVID, it also can be for things like the health and safety of a community or promoting healthy childhood environments. We know that the spike in gun violence is directly tied to economic impact from the pandemic and general stress. And it also reminds us that we need to invest in the organizations that are doing the work on the ground to do violence disruption and prevention. And so cities and states can earmark those dollars to fund our comprehensive gun violence reduction plans and designate violence prevention workers as essential workers. And so that is just an example of that kind of leeway that we have.
Thank you for that, Sia. So now for our next segment, we're going to go more into statement writing. So we just went over how the money has been allocated, but there is a pot of money that decisions have not been made on at the state and local levels. TCI mentioned earlier the special session that's starting on August 2nd. And so that's where those decisions will be made. And so the unallotted sum comes with possibilities for building healthier communities on the peninsula. So now we're going to guide you into writing statements to the committee who makes those decisions so that you have a direct say in the process.
Let's look at the structure of the statement and why it's important. An important part of advocacy is being an effective communicator. To that end, it's good to build connections with other people and motivate them to take action by explaining why you care. Facts, figures, and numbers are good tools, but what's really going to set your advocacy apart and make it resonate with others is you sharing your lived experiences. Your why is what motivates you to take action and create change. A personal experience that drives you to work for a safer and healthier community, almost like a hero origin story. So for the structure, it has 4 parts. And the first part is, as you see on the screen, the intro. And this is simply who you are, why you're here, and the discussion topic at hand. Next is the why you care. This is the personal story or reason that you care about this issue and you want to see the change created in your community, how this impacts you and your community as well. Then the solution, you present a proposed solution. This can be a bill or desired action. Sometimes you want to start with the solution and then work your way backwards to form a statement, as you'll see later. And then lastly, but certainly not least, is your hard ask. This is when you ask whoever you are speaking with to take action on the issue at hand. Some examples are vote yes on this bill versus vote no on this bill. Also, change this policy, increase funding for this program, or come volunteer with VA Block. And the reason why we call it a hard ask is because it's a question that the person you're asking or making a request of will either say yes or no. You don't want to say things like, "Hey, will you value healthcare as a human right?" You want to say, "Will you increase funding for healthcare by X amount of dollars?" Or will you vote yes on this bill?
So taking a look at the statement that is on your screen right now, we're just going to break it down so you can kind of see what an example looks like. So there's the intro. Hello, my name is Catherine Lee, and I'm from Hampton, Virginia. I'm writing because we need funding for the peninsula from the American Rescue Plan. The why we care. Funding for our area is important to me because we have had increased gun violence, people who are at risk of being evicted, and families that are going hungry. Many of these families were struggling prior to the pandemic, but really need help now. A solution. The American Rescue Plan should focus on those that need rescuing the most. Funding specifically for gun violence prevention, eviction prevention, and food security should be the top priorities. Their hard ask. Please include significant funding from the ARP for these concerns on the peninsula. And so that is an example of a why we care statement. You can see that it's not very long, but it definitely gets right to the point. So right now, I want us to take just a minute to think about our top 3 funding asks. I'm just going to give you a minute to think over your top 3 funding priorities. Just in case you can't see the chat, Sia said you can write them down if you like to. All right, we hope that was enough time to think about your funding asks. If you would like to share it, just drop it in the chat and we'll kind of sort of read some of them out loud. So one of our attendees said living wages, jobs, and schools. Housing to address homelessness, evictions, mental health and health care. Mental health / substance abuse and education. Housing, food, childcare / safety. Education, community funding and medical care. Education, mental health, a lot of mental health and a lot of education. Housing, we will be talking about housing, crime prevention, healthcare, and children's poverty. These are really great funding asks. Gun violence prevention, educational disparities, health disparities like HIV and AIDS. We will be talking about health disparities. These are all such important funding areas. Gun violence prevention. Yeah. Money for schools, housing, pay increases for all workers. Absolutely. As a worker, I fully support that one. Small business development. Absolutely. Absolutely. And there is definitely some more stuff in the ARP that we didn't even cover tonight, dealing with small business recovery and development. And don't worry, we will send the links so that you can read all of that. And we can see that, you know, our funding asks are tied. You know, we don't live single issue lives. So we don't have, you know, we don't have single issue struggles. And a lot of these are the same: mental health, education, gun violence prevention, all of the things that make healthy communities healthy. If you are interested in writing a statement for the upcoming town hall, or I'm sorry, for the upcoming special session on August 2nd, you can, if you need us to go back with you over the presentation or you need the slides, we will send them in the follow-up email. And you can submit your statement to Cindy. There we go. You can submit your statement to Cindy's email, and we will make sure it goes to the appropriations committees on both the House and the Senate side. So you don't have to worry about finding all of that stuff. If you want to just send us your statement, we can do that. But the follow-up emails will also be how to get in contact with the appropriations committee on your own, if that's what you would like to do. But yeah. And we will, make sure you include your city and your city council, because we'll be sending those requests or your funding priorities to your city councils as well, because they are getting some funding from the ARP as well.
I think we have our contact, our contact information. And then if we stop share, if you all have any questions that you can put into the question and answer feature, we'd love to get those answered for you. Or if you want to keep dropping your top 3 funding priorities. And just remember, as you're writing the statement, you don't have to be broad if you actually have an idea. So say, for instance, within adult education, you have an idea for a program or an organization that needs support. You can be very specific, especially in those statements, if there's folks that are already doing the work. And so if we mean crime prevention or healthcare, what do we mean under that? You know, so being as specific as possible is super helpful when decision makers are making their decisions. All right, if there are no questions, we'll go on and wrap up.
Oh, there is one question that just popped into the chat. It says, will we know if our statement made a difference?
So I can put on my other hat and let you know that delegates and senators read our emails, and especially those that are looking for ideas like we are now. We know that our lived experiences are not those of all of the residents of the Commonwealth. And so we're really looking to hear more information. You'll know if it helped, if your funding idea is in the budget. But even if it's not, you might be raising awareness to an issue that can be addressed in the 2022 session. So I don't think spending the time to come up with your statement and send it to us so that we can send it in for you is a waste of time. I think every single piece of information that we've shared can be communicated in a way that will be impactful. And we have submitted statements as an organization for many bills that have been passed. And we get feedback from those legislators saying, thank you for the voices that we brought to the table. So, you know, Q and Cindy and Mike have been working on childhood hunger. We got action from Hampton City Council. We worked on Medicaid expansion. I mean, a lot of things that have actually happened. It was statements from our Virginia Block members of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated that that were a part of the chorus of voices from across the Commonwealth.
See, can I share an example of this? So we were in a committee meeting for HJ 555. And when it first came out, it said that you had to be off of active supervision in order to qualify to get your rights automatically restored. Well, I don't remember her name, but this woman said that, hey, I was on active supervision for years and I didn't know why I was, and I couldn't get off of it. So I think you need to change this because it really hinders people from getting their rights restored. And the delegate right there made a motion to amend the bill to change it to say that once you have finished time incarcerated, your rights are automatically restored. So your statements and things, especially your lived experiences, are so powerful, and we've seen it happen.
And just to follow up on that point, because HJ 555 is on the restoration of rights, that did pass. It has to pass the House and the Senate again, and then it comes to residents on the ballot in November. But instead of waiting, because of the input that residents gave, the governor established an executive order that did just what Q was just talking about in the meantime while we're waiting for those steps to happen. So it's like you can speak up in a committee, you can send an email to one person, you don't know how that impact will follow along, especially for those that we check every email and listen. And so so we appreciate that question.
Thank you.
Cindy?
Yep. All right. So thank you for all your questions and for tuning in with us today. So you can learn more about our organization, what we're up to, and the work we've been doing by following us on social media or going to our website at va-block.org. As mentioned previously, our link tree has many resources, including access to our volunteer sign up. So if you want to get more involved with us, please sign up. And you can follow us through this process: statement writing, submitting statements, everything, vaccine information, how to find out who's your legislator, and more. It was shared previously, that Linktree link, but we'll also drop it again. Also, we are still doing workshops and trainings. So for anyone interested in learning more about civic involvement, becoming a stronger advocate for the issues you care about, or how to engage with voters in your community so we can elect people who share our concerns and priorities, you can reach out to Michael Daniels, That's ndaniels@va-block.org. He was also mentioned on that slide. So if you took a screenshot of that, and we'll drop it in the chat. So lastly, I want to remind you that we have more sessions coming up. So on July 13th, we will continue our conversation on economic justice with a part 2. And we will cover topics like housing justice, wages, and access to resources. So going more into that personal finance as well. And then on July 27th, we're talking about women's health, including maternal health care and self-care. And so stay tuned for more information, but you can register at the links in the chat, and we will send all of this information in the follow-up email as well.
Awesome, Cindy. Thank you. And thank you again to our panelists, Ashley, Laura, and Nicole, for so much information. We will, of course, be sure to have a link to this recording because I know we covered a lot of numbers, and we'll have those slides as well that you can refer back to. Thank you also to our partners, Alpha, Kappa Alpha, Sorority Incorporated, Lambda Omega Chapter, to sorority members, Maggie and Donetta, for asking amazing questions, and to Ivy Baptist Church. And of course, thank you for joining us this evening. We will be sure to follow up with all of the information and the links that we dropped in the chat. Don't worry, they'll be in that follow-up email, just like Cindy said. And it's really important. That email is going to have all this information. Guess what you can do? You can forward it to as many people as you can, because the really, really important part is for people to know what is happening. We have said many times that policy decisions can either help or hurt families. And, you know, we think that the American Rescue Plan has targeted and allotted funding for direct aid and investments that help residents, but you have to know, you know, what's coming your way. So we also have to speak up to make sure that our priorities are included in the budget making process. Again, that's August 2nd. So as we have 4 more sessions this summer, we are always looking for ways to improve. So when this session ends, you'll either have a link to pop up or you'll receive a follow-up email. And it's just a quick survey, just checking in to see if you learned something new, if you thought that this information was useful. So your feedback is really, really appreciated. And again, we want to thank you for being here tonight. So thank you for being here, and we will see you on July 13th when we continue this conversation about economic justice and really dive in a little bit deeper. And or we might see you out at one of our pop-ups that we're doing that we would love to have volunteers for as well. So thank you all so much, and have a good night.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.